She was sipping Dom Perignon at 40,000 feet, her Cartier bracelet a gift from the billionaire who adored her. Chloe Sinclair was living a life most people only dream of, flying from Paris to St. Bart's on his private jet. But on one fateful flight, the dream turned into a nightmare. The pilot stepped out, walked past her, and greeted the real owner, the billionaire's heavily pregnant wife. This isn't a movie. It's the true, brutal story of what happens when the Mistress is left stranded on the tarmac. The air inside a Gulfstream G650 doesn't just circulate, it caresses. It smelled of new leather, a hint of jasmine from the fresh-cut flowers in the cabin, and the faintest, most expensive trace of jet fuel. For Chloe Sinclair, this was the smell of success. It was the smell of arrival. She ran a perfectly manicured finger, painted in ballet slippers, down the rim of her Baccarat crystal flute. The champagne, a vintage Dom Perignon rosé, fizzed lazily. Across from her, Julian Croft, Titans of New York real estate, typed furiously on his laptop. He didn't look up, but he smiled. "Enjoying the view, darling?" he murmured, his voice a low, confident rumble. Chloe looked out the window. The view was the curving, frost-blue horizon of Earth, a site reserved for astronauts, and the 0.01%. They were somewhere over the Atlantic, gliding from Teterboro to a private airstrip near Marbella, Spain. "It's perfect, Julian," she said, and she meant it. Chloe's life 6 months ago had been a world away. She was Chloe from Connecticut, a junior PR associate at a high-powered Manhattan firm, drowning in student debt and surviving on lukewarm salads eaten at her desk. Her studio apartment had a view of a brick wall. Then, she'd been assigned to the Croft Holdings gala. Julian Croft wasn't just in the room, he was the room. He had a gravitational pull, a supernova of charisma, bespoke Brioni suits, and a Patek Philippe watch that whispered, rather than shouted, its $100,000 a price tag. He'd looked at her not as a staff member, but as a woman. Their affair had been a whirlwind of 5-star suites at the Plaza, front-row seats at the Opera, and dinners at Per Se where the chef sent things out. But the real change, the true elevation, was the jet. Julian called it the Albatross, a G-anged 50, registered to a holding company in Delaware. Chloe called it home. This was their 4th trip this month. Paris for a weekend, where he'd bought her a Kelly bag from the Hermès flagship store on Rue de Faubourg Saint-Honoré, an act that required no list for Julian. Milan for a single night, just to have dinner at Krakow. Now, Marbella. "This is just the beginning, Chloe," Julian said, finally closing the laptop. He leaned forward, taking her hand. On her wrist, a new Cartier Love bracelet glinted, the one the sales associate had locked on her. "I'm closing the biggest deal of my life. After this, we can be more public." Chloe's heart did a tiny, hopeful leap. The public part was the only flaw in their perfect life. Julian was notoriously private, citing a complicated business partnership as the reason for their discretion. He was, she knew, separated from a wife. A formality, he'd called it. A cold, emotionless merger of 2 families. We haven't lived as man and wife in years. Chloe accepted this. It was the standard script for a man of his stature. She was the one who understood him, the one who matched his ambition, the one who wasn't afraid to live. As she settled back into the plush cream leather seat, she pulled an Hermès Avalon blanket over her lap. The flight attendant, a silent woman named Maria, appeared instantly. "Another glass, Ms. Sinclair." "Please," Chloe smiled. She scrolled through her phone, looking at the photos she'd taken. Her, clinking glasses with Julian. Her, posing on the jet's stairs. Her, with her new Kelly bag. She couldn't post them, not yet. Julian was adamant about that. Privacy is the last true luxury, darling. So she saved them in a folder, a private gallery of her triumph. She was 26 years old and flying on a private jet to Spain with a billionaire who loved her. She thought of her old colleagues, probably sharing a disappointing happy-hour pitcher of sangria right now. She sipped her champagne. It was crisp, with notes of strawberry and a hint of inevitability. This was her life now. There was no going back. Marbella was a sun-drenched haze of exclusive beach clubs, private villas, and the quiet, ever-present hum of serious money. Julian was in his element, holding court on the terrace of a sprawling, white stucco mansion overlooking the Mediterranean. He was in deep conversation with several older European men, their crisp linen shirts unbuttoned just so. Chloe was left to explore. Julian had given her a black-tier Amex, a house card, as he called it, and the keys to a white Aston Martin DB11. She drove to Puerto Banús, the marina where yachts the size of apartment buildings were moored. She walked into a Loewe boutique, the scent of expensive leather washing over her. She picked up a puzzle bag. The saleswoman, noting her bracelet and the watch Julian had given her, a diamond bezel Rolex, was instantly attentive. A beautiful choice. For the yacht, perhaps? The woman smiled. As Chloe was about to pay, her phone buzzed. It was Julian. "Where are you?" His voice was tight, not the easy-going drawl he used in public. "Just shopping in the marina, honey. I found the cutest bag." "Did I say you could go to the marina?" He snapped. "I told you to stay at the villa. These are important people, Chloe. I can't have you visible." The warmth of the Spanish sun suddenly felt like a cold prickle on her skin. "Visible? Julian, you told me to. I thought, just get back, now." He hung up. The saleswoman's smile was frozen, polite. Chloe felt a hot flush of shame. She fumbled for the card. I'll take it." When she returned, the party was gone. Julian was standing on the terrace, staring at the sea. "Who were they?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light, holding up the bag. "Look what I got." He ignored the bag. "They were investors, Chloe. People who don't understand complications." "Am I a complication, Julian?" He turned, his expression softening. He crossed the terrace and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. No, God, no. You're the one sane thing in my life." He held her at arm's length. "It's just my partner. She's becoming difficult." Ah, the partner. This was the source of all his stress, the invisible hand that kept Chloe in the shadows. "The separation, it's not going smoothly," he continued, guiding her to a lounge chair. "She's fighting me on everything. She controls a lot. The assets are all tangled up. It's a mess." "The wife?" Chloe clarified. "Yes, Eleanor." He said the name as if it tasted like acid. "Eleanor doesn't understand business. She just understands control. She's vindictive." This was the first time he'd ever seemed vulnerable. This, Chloe understood. A bitter ex, a woman scorned. "What? What does she control?" Chloe asked. Julian sighed, looking around the palatial villa. "More than you know. She inherited a great deal. My own success is tied to her family's name. I've spent 20 years building an empire, and now she wants to claim it all, just because I was unhappy." He was painting a picture for her, a picture of a man trapped, a genius held captive by a dragon. And Chloe was the one who could save him. "She won't win," Chloe said, her voice fierce. "You're smarter than her. You're Julian Croft." He smiled, a genuine, grateful smile. "That's why I love you. You get it." He kissed her, long and deep. The tension of the phone call melted away. He was right. She was the one who understood him. That night, he made love to her with a desperate passion, as if she were his only anchor in a storm. The next morning, as she was packing her new Loewe bag into her Rimowa suitcase, she saw his briefcase open on the desk. Tucked inside a leather portfolio, she saw a sheaf of papers. She'd never dare snoop, but one document was on top. It was an invoice from a store she didn't recognize. Bon Point. Curious, she Googled it. Her stomach hollowed out. It was an ultra-exclusive, obscenely expensive Parisian children's boutique. The invoice was for a lot. A hand-embroidered cashmere baby blanket, a classic cherry print layette set. A crib? She felt dizzy. He'd told her they had no children. He'd said the separation was cold. She was standing there, phone in hand, when he came in from the shower, a towel slung low on his hips. He saw the invoice, saw her face, and his eyes went cold for a fraction of a second. Then the legendary charm clicked back on. "Oh, thank God you reminded me," he said, snapping his fingers. "My goddaughter. My old partner from a previous firm. His wife just had a baby. Little girl. Olivia, I think. Have to send the best, you know. It's just business, darling. Appearances." He said it so smoothly, so easily, that her panic felt silly. Of course. A gift. A business gift. What had she been thinking? That he had a secret baby? The idea was absurd. "Of course," she said, forcing a bright smile. "That's so thoughtful." "Only the best," he said, kissing her forehead. "Now let's get out of here. I have a surprise for you. We're not going back to New York just yet. I'm rerouting the jet." "Where are we going?" she asked, the thrill returning, washing away the doubt. "Los Angeles," he grinned. "I'm finalizing the purchase of our new home in Bel Air. The deal is done, Chloe. The partner, Eleanor, she's out. It's over. This is it. Our new life." The flight from Marbella to Los Angeles was 12 hours of pure, unadulterated bliss. The Albatross wasn't just a jet. It was a testament to Julian's power. He'd rerouted it with a single phone call. He'd changed their entire itinerary, their entire life, on a whim. This flight felt different. It wasn't a getaway. It was a relocation. "To us," Julian said, raising his glass. Chloe noticed he was drinking scotch now, not champagne, a Macallan 25, his deal-closing drink. "To us," she repeated, her voice thick with emotion. "And to Bel Air." "To Bel Air," he confirmed. "A clean slate, no more partners, no more complications." He spent most of the flight on the satellite phone, in the private cabin at the rear of the plane. She could hear him, his voice low and hard. "The offer is final. She has 24 hours to sign. I don't care what the prenup says, that's the number." Chloe put on her noise-cancelling headphones, selected a movie on the massive private screen, and cocooned herself in her cashmere blanket. She felt a wave of sympathy for him. He was fighting for their future. He was liquidating his old life, all for her. The thought was so powerful, so romantic, that it brought tears to her eyes. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, the flight attendant was gently touching her shoulder. "Mrs. Sinclair, we'll be beginning our descent into Van Nuys in 30 minutes." Chloe sat up, stretching. She felt giddy. Van Nuys. The legendary private airport for the rich and famous. This was where her new life began. She went to the lavatory, a room larger than her old apartment's kitchen, all marble and polished wood, to freshen up. She applied a fresh coat of Tom Ford lipstick, insatiable, and fluffed her hair. She wanted to look perfect when she stepped off the plane. The first step into her new life. She returned to her seat, just as Julian emerged from the back cabin. He looked exhausted, but he smiled when he saw her. "Done," he said, slumping into the seat opposite her. "It's all done." "It's over?" she whispered. "It's over." He took her hand. "The house is ours. The lawyers are handling the last of it. By the time we land, I'll be a free man. And you will be the future Mrs. Croft." Chloe gasped. The words hung in the pressurized air, more potent than the champagne, more valuable than the diamonds. Mrs. Croft. "Julian, are you—" "I've never been more serious," he said, his eyes intense. "This has been hell, Chloe. You've been my light. I won't hide you another second. When we land, a car is taking you to the Beverly Hills Hotel. I have to go straight to the lawyers, sign the final papers, and then I'll meet you there. Tonight, we celebrate." "But why not take me with you?" "No, darling. This is the ugly part. The end of the old. I want you to be the start of the new. Go. Have a spa treatment. Buy a dress. My treat. Tonight, the world is ours." As the jet descended, they flew low over the Santa Monica Mountains, the sprawling grid of the San Fernando Valley lighting up as dusk approached. Chloe's heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. The landing was so smooth, she barely felt it. The jet taxied for a long time, past hangars that housed fleets of private planes, a city of wealth. They finally came to a stop in a more secluded area, away from the main terminal, a private hangar illuminated by floodlights. "Here we are," Julian said. He stood, kissed her deeply. "I love you. Don't you ever forget that." "I love you too," she said. "Go. Finish it." "I will," he said. He grabbed his briefcase. "My team will take you to the hotel. I'll see you at 8. He walked to the back of the plane. Chloe frowned. "Aren't you coming out the front?" "No, I have to deplane from the rear, meet my security team. Protocol for this hangar. They're very particular." It was odd, but everything in this world was odd. Chloe nodded. "Okay. See you tonight." He disappeared. A moment later, she heard the thud of a different door opening and closing. The main cabin door opened. The soft California twilight streamed in. The flight attendant, Maria, smiled. "Miss Sinclair, welcome to Los Angeles." Chloe grabbed her Kelly bag, pulled her trench coat over her shoulders, and stepped out onto the metal stairs. The air was warm, smelling of dust and jasmine. She took a deep breath. She was here. Chloe stood at the top of the stairs, a queen surveying her new kingdom. The hangar was vast, clean enough to eat off the floor. A sleek, black Maybach sedan was parked 100 feet away, presumably for her. She descended the stairs, her heels clicking decisively on the metal. This was the moment. The first step. The pilot, a man in a crisp uniform with silver-grey hair at his temples, emerged from under the wing. He was tall, with a military bearing. He'd been in the cockpit the whole time, a silent presence. His name, she'd read on the plaque, was Captain Marcus Hayes. He walked towards her. Chloe prepared her most gracious, "Thank you for the flight," smile. But Captain Hayes didn't stop. He walked right past her, his eyes fixed on something behind her. "Ma'am, welcome back. We've just completed the transatlantic log as requested. The cargo is secure and will be removed shortly." Chloe turned, confused. Cargo. A black Rolls-Royce Cullinan, which had been parked in the shadow of the hangar, glided silently to a stop just behind the Maybach. A chauffeur ran to the back door, but it was already opening from the inside. A woman stepped out. She was, even to Chloe's stunned eyes, magnificent. Tall, with raven black hair pulled into a severe, elegant chignon. She wore a simple, perfectly tailored black wool coat that was draped, not buttoned, over her body. She moved with an animal grace, a predatory stillness, and she was, without a shadow of a doubt, 8 months pregnant. The woman fixed her gaze, not on the pilot, but on Chloe. Her eyes were a deep, icy blue, and they held an expression of profound, bored appraisal. Chloe's blood turned to ice, the bond point invoice, the difficult partner. Eleanor. Captain Hayes stood at attention. Mrs. Croft, I hope the flight was comfortable for your guest. She looks comfortable enough. The woman's voice was low and smooth, with a faint British accent. Thank you, Captain. You may prepare for the return leg to New York. Mrs. Croft? Chloe heard her own voice, thin and reedy. Julian. Julian's waiting for me. Eleanor Croft smiled. It was the most terrifying smile Chloe had ever seen. It didn't touch her eyes. Yes, I imagine he is, Eleanor said, taking a step closer. He's probably in a holding cell at the Van Nuys Municipal Police Department. I timed the call to my lawyers for about 10 minutes before we landed. Chloe's world tilted. What? No, he's signing papers for our new house. We're getting married. The sound that came from Eleanor was almost a laugh, but it had no humor in it. Getting married? Oh, you poor stupid thing. You really are, aren't you? She walked past Chloe, running a gloved hand along the fuselage of the G650. This is a beautiful jet, isn't it? A Gulfstream G650ER, serial number 6451. My father bought it for me on my 30th birthday. It's registered to my holding company, EC Holdings, LLC, not Julian's. Mine. She turned back to Chloe, her eyes raking her from head to toe. My husband, or I should say, my soon-to-be ex-husband, has many flaws, but his most expensive one is his taste in hobbies. I'm not a hobby, Chloe whispered, her throat closing. He loves me. Of course he does, Eleanor said soothingly, as one would to a child. He loved the last one, too, a blonde gallery assistant from Soho, and the one before that, an aspiring actress in London. Julian collects pretty ambitious girls. He thinks it's a perk of marrying me. No, he said you were separated. He said it was a merger. Oh, it was a merger, darling. A merger in which my family's $10 billion real estate empire merged with his charm, and a failing construction business in Queens. He's a glorified employee, Ms. Sinclair. An employee I am in the process of firing. Eleanor gestured to the pilot. Captain Hayes? Be a dear and inform Ms. Sinclair of the manifest. Captain Hayes, his face an impassive mask, looked at Chloe. Mom, for the duration of this flight, you have been logged on the official manifest as in-flight entertainment. Chloe's legs gave out. She stumbled back, hitting the stair. In-flight entertainment. He's very literal, Eleanor said, checking her watch. Now here's what's going to happen. My husband has been systematically liquidating joint assets and diverting funds for months, all to build this fantasy life with you. The house in Bel Air. It was a $30 million purchase he attempted to make using a line of credit from my account. My lawyers froze it this morning. The deal he was closing, Chloe breathed. The scotch, the satellite phone calls. It was him trying to fight my lawyers, Eleanor finished. The flight here. I allowed it. In fact, I insisted on it. It's very hard to prove misappropriation of marital assets in a divorce, but having my pilot fly my husband's mistress across the Atlantic on my jet while he embezzles, that, Ms. Sinclair, is what lawyers call Exhibit A. You're the star witness in my divorce settlement. The Maybach? The hotel? Chloe was grasping at straws. "The car," Eleanor said, gesturing to the Maybach, "is for my legal team, who are arriving from LAX. The Beverly Hills Hotel? Your reservation was, of course, cancelled, along with the credit card Julian gave you, which was also mine." She took a step closer, the cold fury now radiating from her. "You've been wearing my clothes, sleeping in my homes, drinking my champagne, and flying on my plane. And now you are done." Eleanor nodded to two large, grim-looking men in suits who had emerged from the hangar. "Diaz, Scott. Please retrieve Mrs. Croft's assets." "Assets?" Chloe whimpered. "The Kelly bag," Eleanor said, pointing. "My father gave that to me. I see Julian gifted it to you, and the bracelet, and the watch. They were purchased with stolen funds. They are evidence." "No!" Chloe clutched the bag. "No! He gave them to me." The man, Diaz, didn't hesitate. He gently but irresistibly pried her fingers from the strap. He didn't touch Chloe, but his presence was a wall of muscle. The other man, Scott, stepped forward. "The bracelet, Miss Sinclair, and the watch." "The bracelet it's locked on." "We have the key," Diaz said, holding up the tiny, iconic Cartier screwdriver. Sobbing, Chloe held out her wrist. With a clinical click, the symbol of Julian's love was removed. Then the Rolex. They were dropped into a sterile-looking evidence bag. "My suitcase!" Chloe cried, pointing to the cargo hold. "My clothes! My passport!" "Your passport and your wallet will be retrieved and returned to you," Eleanor said, her voice softening just a fraction. "I'm not a monster. I'm just thorough." She looked at the Kelly bag in Diaz's hand, a look of disgust passing over her face. "Have it incinerated. I don't want it back." "Yes, Mrs. Croft." Eleanor turned to go, her coat swirling around her. "Wait!" Chloe yelled, a sudden, desperate anger cutting through her shame. "Why? Why do this? Why? Why me? You're pregnant. He did this to you." Eleanor paused at the door of the Rolls-Royce. She turned, and for the first time, her mask of icy control slipped. Chloe saw a flash of real, profound pain. "He didn't do this to me, Mr. Sinclair. He did this with you." She placed a protective hand on her swollen stomach. "This baby, this is my family. This is my empire. Julian was a miscalculation, a line item I am correcting. You were just the cost of business." "And Julian?" Chloe asked, her last bit of hope fading. "What about him?" Eleanor's smile returned, cold and sharp. "He'll be fine. He signed a prenup that would make a monk weep. He gets nothing. And with this little stunt today, he'll be lucky to keep his name. He'll be out of jail by morning, I'm sure. But he'll have nothing. No money, no power, and no jet." She got into the Rolls-Royce. The door closed with the silent, expensive thud of a bank vault. The car glided away, leaving Chloe alone on the tarmac. Captain Hayes cleared his throat. "Ms. Sinclair?" Chloe turned, tears streaming down her face, her lipstick smeared. He was holding her Louis Vuitton wallet and her passport. He dropped them into her hands, as if they were contaminated. "The hangar is a secure area. You can't stay here," he said, not unkindly, but not kindly either. "There's an exit, that way. It leads to the public street. I'd suggest you call a car." Chloe looked at her phone. The familiar Croft Holdings Wi-Fi signal was gone. She was on guest. She opened the Uber app. Current location pinned her at the edge of an airfield in Van Nuys. She typed in Beverly Hills Hotel and winced. 85,000. She checked her bank account, her real account, the one from her PR days. Balance $114.38. She deleted the destination and typed in Motel 6, Van Nuys. As she walked toward the distant chain-link fence, the G650's engines began to spool up, the sound a rising, terrible scream. It was preparing for its flight back to New York. Chloe Sinclair, standing in the dark, with nothing but the clothes on her back and $114 to her name, put her face in her hands and wept. The lobby of the Motel 6 smelled of stale cigarette smoke, bleach and despair. The man behind the plexiglass barrier looked at Chloe's tear-stained, couture-clad figure with a practiced indifference. $79, $99, plus $20 key deposit, he said, chewing on a toothpick. Chloe slid her debit card through the machine. The approved message was a small, agonizing relief. The room was beige. The carpet was sticky. The bedspread had a cigarette burn on it. The air conditioner rattled like a dying beast. Chloe sat on the edge of the bed, the polyester comforter rough against her legs. This was impossible. This was a nightmare. Julian would fix this. She called his number. It went straight to a new, automated voice. The number you have dialed has been disconnected. She called his assistant. Voicemail. She called the head of his family office. Voicemail. She was locked out. The new life he had promised her, the house in Bel Air, the future as Mrs. Croft. It had all been a lie. A desperate, elaborate fantasy he'd spun for himself as much as for her. He wasn't a king. He was a court jester. And Eleanor was the queen. A cold, pragmatic anger began to replace her hysteria. Eleanor had called her Exhibit A. She'd been used, not just by Julian, who had used her for sex and ego, but by Eleanor, who had used her as a pawn to win a divorce. She looked at her phone. Her only lifeline. She had to get back to New York. She had an apartment, a tiny 400-square-foot studio, but it was hers. She'd kept it, thank God, as a storage space for her old life. She opened the Delta app, a one-way last-minute flight from LAX to JFK, in coach, 480 miles. She didn't have it. The panic that seized her was a physical thing, a cold hand grabbing her windpipe. She looked around the room, desperate. She had nothing. Eleanor's team had been thorough. The bracelet, the watch, the bag. Wait. She ran to the bathroom, her makeup bag. It was the one thing they'd overlooked. She unzipped it. Inside, beneath the Tom Ford lipsticks and the La Mer samples, was her emergency stash, $300 in cash, and her hand closed around it. A small velvet pouch. Inside were a pair of simple diamond studs, her grandmother's, the one piece of real jewelry she'd owned before Julian. She'd stopped wearing them because Julian had said they were quaint. She had just enough. She booked the flight for the next morning. An Uber to LAX would take the last of her cash. The next 12 hours were the longest of her life. She couldn't sleep. She sat in the dark, the motel's blinking sign flashing red on the walls, and replayed every moment, every private dinner, every business call, every smooth, plausible lie, the Bon Point gift, the difficult partner. She'd been so eager to believe. She'd traded her common sense for comfort, her intuition for luxury. She had seen the red flags, but she'd called them a parade. When she finally boarded the 6 a.m. flight, wedged in a middle seat between a snoring salesman and a mother with a crying baby, the humiliation was complete. The flight attendant, handing her a plastic cup of coffee, looked at her with pity. Chloe was still in her expensive trench coat, but now it was rumpled, stained with tears and the grime of the motel. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had fallen from a great height. When she landed at JFK, she took the air train, then the subway, back to her old apartment in Brooklyn. The key stuck in the lock. She had to jiggle it. The air inside was stale. A pile of mail lay by the door, her old life, waiting for her. She showered for an hour, scrubbing her skin until it was raw, trying to wash off the scent of the jet, the motel, and her own failure. She spent the next 2 weeks in a fog. Her phone was silent. The world she had inhabited, the world of private hangars and black cars, had simply vanished. The door had closed. One morning, she forced herself to go online. She needed a job. She needed money. Her old PR firm's website was the first place she looked, and there, on the News tab, she saw it. A press release. Croft Holdings announces corporate restructuring. Eleanor Croft, CEO and chairwoman, to lead streamlined vision. There was a photo. Eleanor, glowing, powerful, standing in a boardroom. She was no longer pregnant. Curious, Chloe typed Julian Croft into Google. The first hit was from page 6. Downfall of a crofty husband. Julian Croft, notorious philanderer and husband of real estate heiress Eleanor Croft, has been officially removed from the company board. Sources say Croft, who was caught funding a lavish lifestyle for a string of mistresses, settled his divorce for a paltry sum, rumoured to be less than his annual bonus. The article was devastating. It detailed his allowance, his company jet, which it noted was his wife's, and his penchant for Instagram models. And then the final, brutal line. His latest paramour, a former PR associate named Chloe Sinclair, was reportedly dumped on the tarmac at Van Nuys. Eleanor literally had her thrown off the plane, says an insider. She's a legend. Chloe dropped her phone. She wasn't just a failure. She was a story, a punchline, a warning. A former PR associate. Dumped on the tarmac. Eleanor hadn't just defeated her. She had defined her. She had written the final chapter of Chloe's gilded life, and in it, Chloe was the fool. The humiliation was a physical ache. Chloe felt like she couldn't breathe, like the walls of her tiny studio were closing in. Dumped on the tarmac. A legend. She was the collateral damage in a war between billionaires. She threw her laptop against the wall. The screen spider-webbed, then went black. The silence in the room was deafening. She was now well and truly alone. No money, no job, no contacts. The friends she'd made in Julian's world, the other women with perfect highlights and tiny dogs, were, of course, gone. Her calls went unanswered. To them, she wasn't Chloe. She was Julian's girl. And Julian was now toxic. Worse than toxic, he was poor. Her old friends, the ones from her PR days, had watched her ascend with a mixture of awe and envy. To call them now? To say, hey, remember that private jet life I was living? Well, it turns out it was all a lie and I'm broke. Can I borrow 50? The shame was too great. So, she did the only thing she could. She sold the last remnants of her other life. She took the subway to a high-end consignment shop in Soho, a place she used to browse for vintage finds. Now, she was on the other side of the counter. The bored, chic-looking buyer appraised her. Chloe had brought her last few trophies, a pair of Chanel slingbacks, a Gucci belt, the Tom Ford trench coat she'd been wearing. They were the few things Julian had bought her from a store, not from his wife's closet. The coat is nice, the buyer said, rubbing the fabric. But we're getting a lot of this season's influencer cast-offs. I can give you $200 for it. Store credit. I need cash, Chloe said, her voice small. Cash is 30%, the buyer shrugged. So, $120. Chloe sold it. She sold the shoes. She sold the belt. She walked out with $280 in crumpled bills. It was enough for groceries and her subway pass. Days turned into a bleak, relentless weeks. She was a ghost, haunting her own life. She applied for jobs, dozens of them. But the PR world is small. The page 6 article had been forwarded, snickered at. Chloe Sinclair, one recruiter had accidentally said aloud, thinking she was on mute during a phone screening. The tarmac girl? Yikes. No, I don't think she's on brand for us. She was radioactive. One night, drowning in cheap wine and self-pity, she did the one thing she'd sworn she wouldn't. She Googled him, Julian Croft. He was gone. No new articles. No sightings. He had vanished. He hadn't fought for her. He hadn't even called. He just evaporated. His love and promises as substantial as the jet contrails he used to leave across the sky. He had been a con man, and she had been his easiest mark. The real story, she realized, was Eleanor. She typed Eleanor Croft into the search bar. The results were different. Eleanor Croft pledges $50 million to Maternal Health Initiative. Forbes profile, the Iron Heiress, how Eleanor Croft cleaned house and took her empire global. Vogue, a nursery in the sky, inside the NY penthouse of CEO Eleanor Croft and her new son, Alexander. Chloe clicked. There she was, Eleanor, in her sprawling Fifth Avenue apartment overlooking Central Park. She was holding a beautiful, dark-haired baby boy. She looked serene, powerful, and happy. The article mentioned her new life as a single mother and her dedication to building a legacy for her son. There was no mention of Julian. There was no mention of the divorce. That was old news, a line item she had, indeed, corrected. Chloe looked at the picture of the baby. Alexander. The name on the Bon Point invoice. It hadn't been Olivia. It had been... She couldn't remember. But she realized now, with chilling certainty, that the invoice she'd seen, it wasn't for a goddaughter. It was for this baby. Julian had been buying gifts for his own unborn child with one hand, while promising a child-free future to his mistress with the other. The depth of his depravity was staggering. He hadn't just been lying to her, he'd been lying to everyone. He was a black hole, consuming everything around him. Chloe closed the browser. The wine tasted like vinegar. She poured the rest of the bottle down the drain. The rage she'd felt, the self-pity, it was all gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard, quiet. She had been stupid. She had been greedy. She had been naive. She had wanted a life she didn't earn, and she'd been rightly and spectacularly punished for it. But Eleanor hadn't just won. She'd provided a roadmap. She'd worked. She'd built something. She'd protected her own. Chloe looked at her reflection in the darkened subway window. The perfect, G650 flying, Tom Ford wearing woman was gone. In her place was a tired, broke 27-year-old with bad roots and her grandmother's earrings. For the first time in a year, she recognized herself. The road back wasn't a road. It was a crawl. It was a painful, gravel in the knees, hands and knees crawl over broken glass. Chloe Sinclair, the woman who had sipped Dom Perignon at 40,000 feet, was now facing the brutal, horizontal reality of gravity. Her first, most agonizing discovery was that she was untouchable. Not just ex-girlfriend of a disgraced con man, untouchable, but laughing stock of the internet, untouchable. She tried to get her old life back. She polished her resume, removing the 6-month sabbatical, the time she'd been Julian's in-flight entertainment. She reached out to her old PR contacts. The first interview was at a mid-level firm in Chelsea. The hiring manager, a woman named Jessica, was someone Chloe had known from industry events. Jessica had always been 3 rungs below her, someone who had watched Chloe swan into galas on Julian Croft's arm. Now the power dynamic was inverted so completely it was sickening. "Chloe," Jessica said, her smile a rictus of pity. She looked at the resume. "It says here you're proficient in decision and brand management. This role is Well, it's for an assistant. I'm eager to get back to work. I'm a team player, Chloe said, the words tasting like ash. Jessica leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Look, Chloe, I like you. I do. But I Googled you. We all Googled you. The tarmac story? My boss saw it. He doesn't think you're on brand for us right now. What does that even mean? Chloe asked, her voice dangerously quiet. It means, Jessica sighed, it means we're a PR firm. We manage perceptions, and the perception of you, well, it's not one of seriousness. I'm sorry. Chloe was radioactive. She wasn't a professional. She was a punchline. She was the tarmac girl. After 2 more, equally humiliating rejections, the last of her consignment money was running out. Her $114.38 toss was long gone. The rent on her tiny Brooklyn studio was due. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. She wasn't just broke. She was on a countdown to being homeless. She stopped looking at PR firms. She stopped looking in Manhattan. She opened Craigslist, set the filter to Queens, and clicked on Admin Office. The ad read, Billing Coordinator, Family Dental Practice. Must be organized, good with numbers. No experience necessary. Will train. 19-hour. Dr. Zito's Family Dentistry and Orthodontics was in a strip mall in Jackson Heights, squeezed between a 99-cent pizza place and a laundromat. The air inside smelled of fluoride and burnt coffee. The interview was with Dr. Zito's wife, Maria, a kind, tired-looking woman in floral scrubs who managed the office. She didn't ask Chloe about brand strategy. She didn't know page 6 from the New England Journal of Medicine. She just pointed to a stack of files. The last girl, she left the insurance claims a mess. You good with computers? Yes, Chloe said. You look like a smart girl, even if you're a little fancy for this place, Maria said, eyeing Chloe's one remaining good blazer. Can you start Monday? I can, Chloe said, her throat tight. And so, her new life began. It was a rhythm of beeps, the 5:30 a.m. alarm on her phone, the beep of the microwave as she heated water for instant coffee, the beep of her Metro card, the ding-dong of the F train's closing doors. The commute itself was a new kind of cabin. It wasn't the G.F.O.'s cream, leather and jasmine scent. It was the 6:15 a.m. F train. It was packed, a rolling capsule of raw, unglamorized humanity. She was pressed against nurses in scrubs, construction workers with drywall dust on their boots, and sleepy students. In Julian's world, she had been a doll, an ornament to be looked at. Here she was nothing, just another body. And in her complete and total anonymity, she found a strange, hollowed-out sliver of peace. No one looked at her. No one cared who she was. She was just Chloe, heading to work. Her job was a universe away from gala planning. She was in a windowless room at the back of the office, reconciling accounts. She learned a new language, the language of dental insurance codes. D2740, porcelain crown. D8080, comprehensive orthodontic treatment. Her lunch was a peanut butter sandwich, eaten at her metal desk in 10 minutes. She listened to the other receptionists, Brenda and Tanisha, talk about their kids, an episode of The Bachelorette, or a 2-for-1 coupon at the local supermarket. Chloe, the woman who had casually discussed the wine list at Per Se, just nodded, smiled, and said nothing. She was a ghost, haunting a dental office. She just worked. She chased down $50 co-pays from the insurance companies. She untangled the mess the last girl had left. She created a new filing system. She was, as it turned out, extremely good at it. The same meticulous attention to detail she'd once applied to Julian's social calendar, she now applied to Signia. Then came the first paycheck. It was a physical check. The office didn't have direct deposit. Net pay, $582. $4. Chloe took it to the check cashing place on the corner, as she hadn't yet been able to open a bank account with her negative balance. The man behind the plexiglass took his 3% fee. She walked out holding a handful of crumpled bills. $564.68. She stood on the sidewalk in Queens, the sound of salsa music blasting from a nearby bodega, and just held it. The Cartier love bracelet had been worth 20 times this amount. But it had been a gift, a prop, a leash. This was ballast. This $564 was the first solid thing she'd held in 2 years. It was hers. She had traded 40 hours of her life for it. It was real. She paid her rent. She bought groceries. She started a spreadsheet to pay down the $4,000 in credit card debt she'd racked up in the immediate aftermath of her fall. 6 months passed. Winter bled into a grimy, slushy spring. Chloe hadn't just been a good employee. She had been a ruthlessly efficient one. The chaos of Julian's world, the constant need to read the temperature of a room, had made her hyper-observant. She saw inefficiencies everywhere. She reorganized the entire billing system, automating reminders, streamlining claims. She saved the practice, as Dr. Zito told her, a boatload. He'd called her into his office. "Chloe," he'd said, "Maria is cutting back her hours. I want you to be the assistant office manager." It came with a 75-cent an hour raise and her own, slightly larger, cubicle. It felt like winning the lottery. Another 6 months flew by. It was a Friday in October. She'd just hit submit on the week's payroll. She had $700 in her savings account. She had, as of last week, paid off the last of her credit card debt. She felt light. On her way home, she did something she never did. She walked past the Starbucks near her apartment, a luxury she'd long since cut out, and she walked in. It was a treat, not a treat from someone, not a reward for being pretty or charming. It was a treat for herself, by herself, paid for with spreadsheets and dental codes. "Grande skinny vanilla latte, please," she said. It was $6, an hour of her old wage. She didn't care. As she waited by the pickup counter, she glanced at the small TV mounted in the corner. It was tuned to Bloomberg, the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, a massive banner, a familiar logo, Croft Holdings. And there, ringing the opening bell, was Eleanor Croft. She was magnificent. She wore a crisp, white Armani power suit. Her dark hair was pulled back. On a simple gold chain, Chloe could just make out a small A for Alexander. She was flanked by her executive team, almost all of them women. She looked serene, powerful, and utterly, terrifyingly in control. The anchor was gushing. And it's a huge day for Croft Holdings, which is going public with its new tech real estate venture. CEO Eleanor Croft, who took sole control of her family's legacy just over a year ago after a high-profile corporate and personal split, has more than doubled the company's valuation. A true masterclass in turning a crisis into an opportunity. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, Croft Holdings, CRFT. IPO opens, plunged 20%. Chloe stood, frozen, the sounds of the coffee steamer hissing behind her. She was watching the woman who had ruined her, the woman who had clinically, and with all the emotion of a surgeon, excised her like a tumor. And the oddest sensation washed over her. The hot, sour bile of envy she expected. It wasn't there. The rage, the humiliation, it was all gone, faded like a contrail. In its place was a cold, hard, profound respect. Eleanor hadn't just been a scorned wife. She was a CEO. She hadn't been emotional on that tarmac. She'd been strategic. The flight to Van Nuys wasn't revenge. It was discovery. It was Exhibit A, just as she'd said. Eleanor had used Chloe, yes, but she'd used her like a scalpel, with precision, to cut out the cancer. The cancer was Julian. Chloe was just the instrument. She's a legend. The page 6 line came back to her. It wasn't a taunt. It was a fact. Eleanor had been playing chess, and Chloe had been... She hadn't even been a pawn. She'd been the cocktail napkin the players were writing their moves on. "Mobile order for... Chloe!" The barista's voice snapped her back. She grabbed the cup. It was hot, real, her name spelled correctly on the side. Her coffee. She walked out into the cold, bright Brooklyn afternoon. As she headed for the subway, the sound of a jet engine screamed overhead. A silver shark streaking out of LaGuardia, climbing fast. A year ago, that sound would have made her ache. It was the sound of her failure, the sound of a world she had lost. She would have looked up with a desperate, pathetic longing, wondering if it was going to Paris or London or St. Bart's. Chloe paused on the sidewalk. She looked up at the white scar across the blue sky. Then she looked down. She looked at the steel and concrete hole in the ground, the stairs leading to the F train. The rumble of the approaching subway vibrated through the soles of her. Sensible, comfortable, 40 thalers, shoes. The jet was a fantasy. The subway was motion. One was a pressurized, air-conditioned lie. The other was taking her home. Chloe pulled her second-hand wool coat tighter, adjusted the grip on her tote bag, and took a sip of her coffee. It was just the right temperature. She fixed her eyes on the subway entrance. She had a train to catch. She was grounded. And for the first time in her life, she was finally in control of the landing. Chloe Sinclair learned the hard way that a life built on someone else's money, someone else's plane, and someone else's husband is just a beautiful, gilded cage. She was flying at 40,000 feet, but had no control, and the landing was brutal. But from that wreckage, she had to learn to walk on her own. Eleanor Croft, the real owner, didn't just reclaim her jet. She reclaimed her life, her company, and her power, proving that the best revenge isn't just living well, it's owning it all. What do you think? Was Chloe a victim or a willing participant? Was Eleanor's revenge justified? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This story is a wild one, so if you enjoyed the drama, do me a huge favor. Like this video, share it with someone who loves a good story. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I have so many more stories like this to share with you. Would you like me to find another real-life story of luxury and betrayal?